Hey, I'm Jakesta, and today I'm going to be doing a bit of an overview and demonstration of my current audio setup using PipeWire. I've recently transitioned over from using kind of a typical JACK and PulseAudio bridge setup and have now kind of fully transitioned over to PipeWire. And I will say off the bat that one of the things that inspired this was a video uploaded by Unfa recently. If you don't know who he is, he makes videos on YouTube. I'll link the channel in the description, where he does a lot of videos about audio production, making music, as well as just like sound design and stuff, all using free and open source software. And he uploaded a video recently where he kind of went in and did a lengthy demonstration of the process of installing PipeWire and using it as a drop-in replacement for that jack setup. And it worked out really well for him, better than I would have thought. I've been following PipeWire since it kind of came out and people started talking about it, but it didn't really seem feasible and seemed like it had a lot of issues achieving the kind of setup that I do initially. But after that video, I decided to just take the plunge myself, and so far I'm fully transitioned over and it works really well, and in a lot of ways it's better than that PulseAudio and jack bridge setup that I used to use. So with this, I just kind of want to show off how I use it, and that, PipeWire is kind of feasible to use now in a lot of ways. It's not perfect. I know there are some use cases that will kind of show the cracks a little bit more, but for me right now, it's very usable. So I'm just going to kind of demonstrate how I use it, and maybe some of the things I do with PipeWire, which my setup now largely replicates what I used to do with jack. Maybe these things will kind of serve as inspiration of like what you can do with your own setup. So kind of an overview, I guess there are two main things that I had set up with jack and PulseAudio that I use on a daily basis, aside from just like making music and having DAWs function correctly. The two main things are, first, separating applications to their own syncs. So if you're familiar with jack, you use a lot of graphical applications for routing, and you can take your different hardware devices, route them to other inputs and applications in jack. And my initial problem with jack was that a lot of applications just don't use it. So where something like Ardor or another DAW that's plugging directly into jack will show up in like a routing grid and let you just manipulate it easily, visually. A lot of applications like Discord, browsers and stuff, they all rely on PulseAudio largely. So the kind of setup that I found with jack was to use the PulseAudio module for jack syncs and jack sources, which would basically create like virtual inputs and outputs for jack that are basically just relaying PulseAudio streams. And the main reason I did that is for recording. So the kind of first thought was to separate Discord and Spotify and other music players, their playbacks, from the rest of my desktop. Because there were a lot of situations where, you have your mixer set up in OBS and like the level set, but sometimes you'll find that you record a clip and you're doing something with people where you're playing games or watching stuff together and have a recording of that. The levels might be off, or maybe like Discord's a little bit too quiet compared to the game audio or the rest of your desktop audio, or your mic's too loud or too quiet compared to Discord and the rest of your desktop, or maybe like you're doing something where you're chatting with people and you have a music player playing. And when you take that footage and want to do something with it, you kind of like find yourself wishing you didn't have music playing in the background. So my solution was to use these PulseAudio syncs for virtual jack devices and have separate outputs for Discord, Spotify, etc. compared to the rest of my desktop. And then in OBS, you can map those to their own audio tracks so that the final recording you can put in a video editor and they have their own dedicated audio tracks. So I can go in there and say, like, I was doing a gameplay with some friends and I had music playing. Afterwards, in the OBS recording, I can put that in a video editor and just mute the Spotify track, and the rest of my desktop audio is still there. And even then, like, Discord is separated from the games and whatever else is doing. So post-recording, I can go in and adjust like the levels compared to each other. So that was kind of a main use case. I hope that made sense the way I explained that there. And then the other one is, I think, kind of a common thing to do. Maybe not, I don't know. But just for vocal processing. So I don't really have equipment right now to do hardware processing for like a compressor and EQ and stuff on my mic. I just have this mic, the AT2020, just plugged in directly to my audio interface. And I like to have a little bit of processing, some compression, some EQ, just to make it sound a little bit nicer and be able to use that in voice chats and other applications. So Jack kind of allowed that as well, because I am able to use the Carla plugin host to load up a bunch of processing plugins, route my mic through those, and then route that final output into the virtual syncs that I mentioned earlier, to have like a dedicated virtual mic input that is post-processing. And basically with that Pulse Audio itself, we'll just see this mic source. Meanwhile, in the background, Jack has all these plugins routed into it. But applications like Discord, I can just set my mic to this one source that Pulse Audio sees, whereas normally like Pulse Audio isn't going to see all these plugins and other inputs handled by Jack. So those are kind of the two main cases. And then I switched over to PipeWire and kind of replicated that setup, and it's working really well so far. So I'm going to kind of go over how my setup works now and show that it kind of just works under Pulse Audio. So I guess the first thing I'll do is kind of go over the mic processing, because that's just the last thing I mentioned. So here we have Carla. This is a plugin host. And as you can see, I'm using it right now into OBS. But this is just kind of what's going on my mic right now. One reason this is very useful for me is because where I am, there's no air conditioning. It's very hot indoors this time of year. So I always have to have like a desk fan running and stuff. So normally with Pulse Audio devices, just seeing my mic itself and not able to handle all these jack plugins, in order to have a good level for my mic, I'd have to crank the gain, and having desk fans and stuff running, you just get so much background noise. So being able to keep my gain really low on my interface and then do processing to boost the levels and process it a little bit, and using stuff like noise repellent, which, just side note, is a really good noise reduction plugin you can use. It makes things sound a lot nicer with the way I have it set up. So Carla I would use with Jack, and I think largely with the help of the PipeWire Jack drop-in package. I don't remember exactly what the name of the package was, but it's kind of on Arch. You can download it from the AOR, and it basically lets PipeWire talk to all these applications that are relying on Jack, because they just see this Jack server, which is really just sending all of it to PipeWire. So I'm able to kind of just use this same preset saved of Carla and just use it with PipeWire. And as you can see, it's working. And this is just my mic's going up the top here, going through all these plugins and coming out into a virtual source, and that's what's plugged into OBS. So I guess to get a better idea of how this setup is actually working, I'll go ahead and next go to the graph. Kind of another side note, I used to use, I believe it was called Claudia. They kind of all have, Claudia. They all have similar names, but Claudia is part of the Cadence toolkit, and it's used for like session management, so that I could have my Jack routing set up a certain way and have my Carla plugins loaded in there. And then every time I start on my computer and log in, it just opens it the way it was. I found though that with PipeWire, even with the Jack drop-in package, Claudia just crashes for me after a while and just becomes completely unresponsive. So I've recently switched over to using QJack control, which even though Jack's technically not running, it works perfectly. So you can go in here, and similar to Claudia, you have your session here, so it kind of saves all the routing and stuff I do. And I'll open the graph here. So this, to anyone who doesn't use like routing grids and stuff like this, it might seem a little confusing, but it really is kind of straightforward. I'll say first of all, you could ignore everything on the left that isn't routed, because I'm not currently using these. These are just other devices. But yeah, this is the setup itself. So there are a few things you can see here. The main one, kind of the root of everything, is this here UMC 404. That's my audio interface. That's what my mic is plugged into, and that's what I hear output out of. And I also have some like monitors hooked up to it as well. So that's the hardware that's controlling all of this. And then you have some things here like Camlink 4K. This was not possible in Jack. This is really cool. This is just the Camlink, which my camera is plugged into my computer through. Elgato Camlink. It is able to process audio streams. Normally Jack would not see this device. It would show up as a Pulse Audio device, but Jack would not see it. But under PipeWire, it just shows up in the routing grid like anything else. So that's kind of super cool. And it takes a little bit more work and tinkering to kind of make this Camlink audio go to Jack before, whereas with PipeWire, it just shows up. It just works. So, but I'm not using it right now, but I just wanted to mention that. And then same thing, With these, this is like I think this is the HDMI audio on my monitor, so the speaker. And then over here, this is the built-in sound card in my motherboard. And again, normally you can't see this in jack routing, but it works with PipeWire. These are different sound cards. Usually you have jack set to a certain sound card, and then the inputs and outputs of that sound card are what you're using. And then in order to get other sound cards in the mix, it would take a little bit more work to configure, or you can, use pulse audio syncs and like monitoring and kind of loop stuff back to each other. But with PipeWire, everything just shows up. You can use multiple sound cards in the same routing grid, and like I can route the input of my audio interface to the sound card on my motherboard just by like dragging this. It's kind of crazy, and it's kind of like what a lot of people have wanted for a long time, is just be able to have all these sound cards as well as individual applications all show up like in one unified area. So that's pretty cool. But anyways, I'll kind of get more into the setup itself. Like I said, this is my sound card, and as you can see here, where did Claudia go? Or Carla. So Carla has all these plugins loaded, and just like Jack would, here are all the plugins. And so what's working here is my audio interface has input number 4, which my mic is plugged into, going to the first plugin, to the next plugin, just kind of along the chain into this Discord source. Discord source is a pulse audio source. So applications that are relying on pulse audio basically see this as an input, which means anything that I set this as the input to has all the processing like I mentioned earlier, which is pretty cool. So that's kind of straightforward. It's just routed through all these plugins, and then I can use this as my mic, my virtual mic. And so this is where you plug stuff into the virtual source. And then to show what it's actually doing, I have the other side of it right here. This is what Discord source is outputting to. So as you can see right now, it's plugged into OBS as my mic input. And then if I go ahead and open Discord, it'll open on my other monitor, so you won't see it, but oh, it's updating. Nice. Gotta love to see this. I'll give that a second. Alright. As you can see, now that Discord's loaded, you have this Chromium that just popped up. Discord's runs on Chromium, so it's not called Discord, but it's Chromium, and basically that will pop up whenever the app itself is outputting like UI noises. And that just kind of goes to my master sync, which is just, master is for all the etc desktop stuff, so that just goes straight to my main playback. And yeah, so that Chromium will pop up. As you can hear me muting and unmuting, it just pops up for like UI sounds and stuff. So if I go ahead and join a voice channel, you'll see this WebRTC voice engine. This is what Discord is using for the input and output of like voice chat. And as you can see, with this session management through Jack, this Discord source, which again is receiving my processed mic input, automatically routes itself to WebRTC voice engine, because that's like the input that's set in Discord. And then this does not output to my sound card, it outputs to Discord sync. So I'll just kind of move that out of the way so it doesn't get too confusing. And that's what's down here. So Discord sync is going into my sound card so that I can hear what is happening in the voice chat. But it's also going into OBS as its own audio track, which is pretty cool. And then also just having this Discord voice engine here, it's like magic, like the way PipeWire handles it. Because again, normally with Jack, I would not see this in the routing grid. I would have my Discord source in the routing grid, and this would be just not there, and I would have to rely on just using Discord settings to set my mic input to Discord source. But in here, I can get a visual representation of it right here and drag it from here rather than having to use the Discord settings. So yeah, Discord source is my mic going into both OBS and Discord. Discord itself is only outputting to Discord sync, which is just a virtual like audio device. And then that virtual device, which the other side of is right here, is outputting to OBS on its own track and my sound card. Whereas master audio is also going to my sound card and a different audio track in OBS. So everything else on my desktop is completely separate from Discord. And then as you can see here, Spotify is also there on its own track. So if I go ahead and open Spotify, I can go ahead and play something that won't get me flagged. As you can see, Spotify itself is right now routed to the master. In order for me to hear it. But if I want to separate it from a recording, I can just disconnect it from the master output and connect it to the Spotify sync just by dragging it. And the Spotify sync is already routed to my sound card. So I can still hear it, but it is on a separate audio track from both Discord and the rest of my desktop. So it's that simple. And having Spotify show up as its own thing within the routing grid is just again, like I said, it's magic. Because normally in Jack, you would not see Spotify. You would have to do this through PulseAudio syncs off to the side. So yeah, overall, hopefully that kind of gets the point across that this is really sick. This opens up so much of an ability to be flexible and just manage all the applications and all this hardware sound cards in one place without having to fiddle around with either Jack configs with ALSA underneath it or PulseAudio syncs and having them bridge together and all that. It just works. So I guess the next thing I'll do is show you how the pulse sources work, how you engage them. If anyone's interested in doing this, because again, normally if you're using PipeWire out of the box, you're not going to have these virtual sources here. You are going to see your applications and your hardware, but if you want to do something like I'm doing with my setup where you have specific applications separated to their own syncs and using something like OBS to record them to separate audio tracks, rather than by default OBS would just record the output of your sound card, and that would include all the applications on your desktop. You just have to do a little bit of a thing with PulseAudio. Alright, so this is just a little script I used to do it, but you can run these individual PA control commands themselves. And basically what this does is this is through PulseAudio. It tells PulseAudio, hey, create a null sync, which is just a virtual audio device, and give it a name, and that's it. With Jack, what you'd have to do, maybe I have the I still do have the old Jack version. So with Jack, you'd have to do more commands because you'd have to create a Jack sync and a Jack source separately. With PulseAudio null sources, it has inputs and outputs both on one thing. So for this is Discord source. Create a source name. So this is something that once you load this module, you're able to use it as a mic input. So your web browser, voice chat, Discord, whatever you're using, if you go to choose your mic, it'll show your actual hardware mic, and then this will also show up as a mic, which is kind of cool because you can route whatever you want into this. If you're screen sharing something, obviously Discord itself has screen sharing and you can share the audio or whatever. It doesn't work on Linux yet because Discord just hasn't implemented it properly. But yeah, if you want to share something that's playing back for you, even play music or whatever, you can go ahead and take this Discord source and just route Spotify directly into it, and now your music is playing through your mic on Discord. And then you also have your physical mic routed to it, so you have both at once. But yeah, that's the source, and then the syncs are basically the virtual outputs. So this is how I separate stuff. Side note, the reason this is called Discord source is because the original reason I used it was for specifically voice chat, but now I kind of just use it for my general mic processing and I use it for everything. But because my setup, I have some config files referencing Discord source, I just leave it named that instead of changing it to main mic or something, because it just works. Too much work to change it now. But yeah, as you can see, I have one dedicated to Discord, Spotify, and Master, which you saw show up in here as their own things, which is pretty cool. And yeah, you can name these whatever you want. And I can kind of demonstrate how this command works and how kind of seamless it is to use. So I'll just kind of show you how this command works. So from a terminal, you can just go PulseAudio control, load module null sync, and do sync name, and I can do like a video test. Boom. And right away in the routing grid here, we now have the video test sync and the video test monitor. And the monitor is going to be what you're able to send to outputs, whereas the sync is what you're sending applications to. So I open Spotify again. Let's go ahead and play some of my own music so it doesn't like flag it or whatever. So right now, Spotify is going to the master sync. And you know, I can manually disconnect these and put them to the video test sync to separate it. Or if you're using something like a desktop environment and you're using the built-in audio control, ignore this plasma bullshit like just pops up because of this mixer. But as you can see in the audio mixer, you have your kind of default setup, and then you have your applications. In Spotify here, I can see, you know, what Spotify is outputting to, and you have all my outputs, and I can say, hey, video test, boom. Now, Spotify is outputting to the video test sync, and now I can't hear it, no one else can hear it, like it's just going to this null sync, and it's just playing into the void. And with this monitor, I can take what this sync is receiving and now put it to whatever I want. So like, for example, I can put it to my sound card. And now I'm able to hear it. And then I can put it to my master sync. And now OBS or whatever else is using my master sync can hear it. So yeah, it's really that easy to just do that. And like I said, like you can use this, your built-in desktop environment, like audio output, and use that to set it. So you don't have to use a routing grid. And you know, these, which are designed to use PulseAudio by default, maybe also as well, they will just see all these sources and syncs that you're using. And another cool thing with JACK control, like you can see, like these have some weird names. You can go ahead and just right click these and rename them at whatever you want. And then what I do is within JACK control, I go to session and you can save this session. And that makes it so the next time you open JACK control and load the session, it'll remember kind of what is routed to what. Otherwise, if you don't save a session, every time you start it, it'll do the default routing and you'll have to manually move it to the syncs. Like I'll have to manually move the audio sync for Discord to where it needs to go. I'll have to manually route my mic through all the plugins. With JACK control, I just save the session, and every time I load it, it remembers the routing. So pretty dope. Then I guess one more thing I can show, one last thing, is just OBS itself, because I know I mentioned OBS a lot. Woo! Alright, so in OBS, you can go ahead and open up these settings, and we have the audio. As you can see, my desktop audio is the master audio sync, so that's pretty much every application, except for Discord, which is on its own sync, so that's desktop audio too. And those show up as their own things down there. And then my mic is Discord source, which is the virtual sync. And yeah, they all just show up in OBS because OBS is expecting PulseAudio, so it's like, oh, look at all these PulseAudio devices, and these syncs are technically devices. So you can just choose those. And then how I do it for recording is you can right click in OBS and go to advanced audio properties, and you have your tracks here. And so what I'll do is Discord, the rest of my desktop, and my mic will all be on track 1, so that if you open up the recording on any video player, you'll be able to hear everything just as it is out of OBS. But then I also have these separated, so my desktop is on track 2 by itself, Discord's on track 3 by itself, and my mic is on track 4 by itself, so that when you open it in a video editor, you have separate tracks and can change it afterwards. But yeah, I guess that's about it for now. That's my full audio setup using PipeWire. Again, that used to be a setup I accomplished with both JACK and PulseAudio, but like I said, it was a lot more work using PulseAudio JACK syncs and sources, and you could only use one sound card. You didn't have applications showing up in JACK. You had to rely on mapping them to the sources with other settings tools, like the GUI on your desktop or the application's outputs themselves, and then manipulate the sources and syncs within JACK, whereas PipeWire, all there. You can do whatever you want with it. So yeah, that's about it. I hope maybe showing this off gave you some ideas of things you can do with your setup, or like kind of show you that PipeWire just is kind of working. Like through this process of demonstrating it, nothing has crashed yet. Managing the session with JACK control remembers the routing pretty well, and does what it needs to do. And yeah, it's functional. PipeWire is super sick. It's definitely the next step for Linux audio, and I hope to see it mature more and have more features. I haven't really got into the video side of PipeWire. It's used for video things as well, which I think should improve screen sharing and stuff like that on Linux. And yeah, I hope you kind of think this is cool too and try it out on your own setup. I think it's kind of a time now where maybe for a production environment that's super crucial, maybe it's not worth it yet, but for most people I feel like PipeWire is the way to go in general, and I think like the most recent Fedora versions for workstation already included by default, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, if you have any other suggestions of maybe streamlining the way I do certain things with my setup, or like tools I could use to manage things other than JACK control and Carla or whatever, then go ahead and comment them. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed, and hope you try out PipeWire for yourself. Peace.